Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Trades Lady Happy Hour. I am broadcasting from not my house. This is another lovely hotel room. And tonight we are being joined by an amazing woman who I have a ton of respect for. If you're not already familiar, her name is Laura Salas, and she is just an incredible woman. She is a painter, body tech, collision specialist. She teaches at the college level. She's been out to participate in at All Girls Garage with the High Yellow 56 truck, as well as recently for the Volvo build. So, my dear, I know we just hung out recently, and we've talked about a bunch of things, but I wanna go back in time a little bit before we get into kind of all the current stuff that I know we want to talk about. But can you share with everybody kind of what your story is, kind of how you got your start, how you got into this industry, and what your experience of getting into the industry was?
Sure. I started in collision by proxy of my father. He's a journey level technician. I kind of grew up around the body shop setting, in and out of visiting him. Had zero interest for it growing up. I just remember the smell of body filler, honestly, which is like a very distinct smell. But other than that, it's like, okay, great. Dad works on cars. Cool.
Yeah.
Somewhere in high school, I really got into open wheel racing and wanted to be a race car driver, which is a crazy dream.
Not crazy.
And when I started doing my research, I was probably 13, 14, 15. Starting a race car career at 15 is super late, right?
Yeah.
So I told my mom, and she's like, yeah, sure, go for it. Let's figure it out. And I was like, you know what? That looks a little far-fetched. So let me just be like a pit crew person or something.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, mechanical. And I started looking into that, and it required engineering degrees or going to mechanical school. And I just realized that, okay, I'll go into my auto shop program in my high school, and that's probably a start, right?
Fair.
So in my auto shop program, I learned about the body shop or collision programs in the area. And they were doing field trips or whatever. And around the same time, I had asked my dad for money for a prom dress. And he's like, you want money for a prom dress? You have to work for that prom dress.
Nice.
So spring break I think it's my senior year, he's like, you have nothing to do this week. Why don't you come with me to work? You can help me clean up my toolbox, my stall, whatever. I'm like, sure, I have nothing else to do during spring break. I'll go. I go with him on Monday. And within probably an hour, I'm done, right? And it's like, okay, what am I going to do for the next 7 hours?
Great. What now?
Right. He works at a certified BMW shop.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
he's kind of hesitant to maybe let me touch a car because, it's certified BMW.
Yeah.
So then he gives me a door to take apart. And he's like, this has to keep you busy for 7 hours. So I take the door apart, and it's 2 hours later, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. What do I do now for the next 5 hours? And he's like, what the heck? How in the world? So he manages to keep me busy that whole day, and 8 hours later, my feet are killing me, killing me. And I'm like, oh my God, this was like the most fun I've ever had in my life.
I love it.
Like, just working on the car, watching him, watching the other technicians, being in that whole environment of just things moving, things wrenching, parts coming and going. And I said, I want to come back with you all week, and I want to come back with you on the weekends. So then he asked his manager, let me come back with him all week through the weekends. And that's kind of where it all started. I looked into schools. I looked into a trade school relatively close to where I lived, and it was a private institution, kind of out of my price range. I didn't have $40,000 laying around at that time.
Oh, geez, it was that expensive?
Yeah. So then I heard about a community college program that had relatively good reviews just in general. So I went and checked it out. The program was impacted, so I ended up getting a letter from my BMW manager kind of vouching for me to get in the program. So I got in, did my 2 years, got my associate's degree, and fly birdie fly, right?
I love it.
That was
So,
it.
where did you
Yeah.
make the switch from mechanical to body? If you were loving mechanical so much, when did that switch happen?
That week I went to work with my dad.
Because
He
he was
got me,
doing body stuff,
yeah,
or
yeah, he's doing body stuff. He
okay,
got me welding, he got me taking stuff apart. He taught me
gotcha.
how to replace tires, and he had this crazy project. Well, it wasn't a project, it was a job, but it was a whole unit side of a brand new 3 Series. So when I got to the car on Monday, it didn't have, like, the roof was being held up by like a hood prop.
Oh wow.
There was no structure to the side of the car. That's how intense of a repair it was, and it was like on a frame machine all jigged up, and it had measuring things all over. So I got to see the process of that, and I was like, I wasn't necessarily a fan of puzzles, but that puzzle looked fun. And he got me all involved in it, and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
I love it. I love it. Very cool. And so he was supportive, I assume, or was that all just
Oh
to try
yeah.
to get you an expensive prom dress? Like, did he think this was gonna stick with you?
I don't think so. I think he kind of went through the motions of like, oh, it looks like she's enjoying it. Like, let's milk it. And he probably thought, well, she'll probably change her mind later or something to that effect. And I I think even when I enrolled in the program, he was like, well, that's cool. And and I kept going back to work with him like on and off during the program and after I graduated. Um, so I think at some point he was like, okay, she's serious. And just kind of like, continued supporting me,
That's
continued
awesome.
mentoring me. Yeah, there was never any backlash from my parents or any doubt or
That's
questions or you should probably do something more girly, like none of that.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you had something kind of like you and I kind of talked about a little bit a couple of weeks ago when you were in Phoenix was kind of your experience of having like such a positive experience coming up and not really facing the negativity that I think a lot of the ladies do. And you were expressing you kind of like feel a little bit of like almost guilt over that because you
Yeah.
had this like great experience. I think it's so cool to hear because you're a slightly younger generation than I am, and it's really like awesome to hear stories of women who are experiencing less backlash and experiencing support and experiencing encouragement. So it's very, very cool to see.
Yeah, at some point, I think when I came to work as a professor here at the back in the program, through my students transition experiences and uh, after meeting you, going down to High Yellow and kind of getting in touch with more stories of women in the industry, I definitely came to the realization that I had this on a silver platter, handed to me on a silver platter in terms of my experience through the process. I contribute a lot of it to being kind of not that he was actively sheltering me, but just having my dad around for so long, I know protected me from a lot of what could have been bad.
Yeah.
And just in conversation with him and maybe other people, I have realized that there were some instances that could have been bad, and I just never really interpreted them that way. I was so lasered focused on what I wanted that the comments or the actions or whatever could have been interpreted negatively,
Yeah.
it just never even fazed me, like, until I was a little bit older and realized, well, that wasn't right, and that wasn't right either, and well, that could have been really bad. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
I don't know, it has been great, and it's been even greater to learn from other people and really appreciate my transition in my path in comparison to what some of these women that I've heard have had to endure. And I'm like, my God, I've heard some stories that have had me literally in tears.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can't not believe it. But it's been good. So I want to share I want to share it and just let people know that there's positive transitions, there's good paths to this, there's people that support, that want to help you grow, that want to see you grow, and the ones that don't, like, get out of here.
I agree. I think you're so right. And huge shout out to Dad for being as supportive as he was, and for having the harebrained idea of bringing you into work to make you pay for your dress. I think that's awesome. Little did he know.
I know.
Big shout out to Dad and Mom for being as supportive as they were. But I think it's great hearing the story of positivity. And yeah, like there are a lot of negative things out there, and to your point, like, if you stay focused on what your goal is, the rest of it kind of blurs into the background, at least hopefully. And knowing that there are good places out there, there are good people out there who are going to give you a fair chance. Do you
Yeah,
think
100%.
what do you think contributed to you deciding to go back to teaching versus being out in the field? What was that about?
Oh man. Okay, so let me take a sip of my boring seltzer water here.
Seltzer water? Come on now. Well, I
I
guess you're
have
at work, so it's allowed.
I have class tonight, yeah.
That's
So
allowed.
um I went into business ownership with my dad when I was, I don't know, 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
And we co-owned a shop for about 6 years. Um, Such a blessing, such a learning experience. I had a great time. I met a lot of great people. I had a lot of great experiences. I came to the realization that business ownership was not for me. People talk about working with family as like a bad thing. And when it came to him and I, we work really well together on the floor. We cannot be business partners. But we make a great team on the floor.
Interesting.
I really held on to that. I really valued that. I really enjoyed working on the cars. I hated everything about the office. I hated everything about, not necessarily customer service, because I like the educational part of customer service.
Yeah.
But not very many of those interactions end up being an educational moment, as you know.
Yes.
So I think for me it was so much of I really, really want to continue to love this industry and love what I'm doing. So I have got to get out of owning my own business.
Interesting.
In the midst of me kind of a lot of conversations, a lot of thinking, my mentor here at the college was retiring, and I was brought that was brought up to me and said, well, you should apply for the position. And at the time I was looking to get out of the ownership part, but I wasn't necessarily looking to teach.
Right.
In fact, my life plan was I'll own when I'm 30, I'll teach when I'm 50, and I'll retire, right? I was owning at 21. I
Right.
started teaching at 25. And it's like, okay, now what?
You were just on a really accelerated program.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what the heck happened. So I applied for the position. I qualified for the position. I said, well, what the heck? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I cleaned up my resume. Getting hired by the state is a process. So 6 months later, literally 6 months later, I show up to HR and they're like, well, we're doing the math and it looks here that you're 14 days shy of completing your minimum experience requirement. And I'm like, what? So the HR lady's like, let's do this. I'm going to give you back this packet. Come back in 15 days.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I had gone through all the interviews, and I get to HR, and they're like, yeah, we can't hire you until 2 weeks.
Oh, my God.
So I came back in 15 days, and we finished the process. I was always someone that was terrified of public speaking. I rehearsed my interview because I had to teach the panel how to weld in 15 minutes, which is impossible.
Oh, wow.
I rehearsed my interview, and in my first rehearsal with my mentor, I had a panic attack and could not speak for like 10 minutes. I was just like hyperventilating.
Oh, my God.
I cannot do this. And it was just him and I, right?
How did you get over it?
He just sat there for an hour until the presentation came out of my mouth. And I was like, oh my God. I can't believe it's been an hour. I'm sweating like a whatever, and this is crazy. So it happened. I got hired. I told my dad I was going to take 4 months off to give teaching a shot, and my dad was super supportive the whole time. I showed up the first day of class.
Did you have a panic attack again?
No. I was kind of like, all right, like I'm super nervous, right? It's like 7:59 and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go out there. And I start talking and it's like euphoric. Like I loved it. The best 4 hours till that point of my life.
I love it.
So I called my mentor and I said, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. Thank you very much. That was fun.
I love that so much. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how, like, it all kind of happened so fast, and I kind of went through the motions, and I was like, all right, well, this is what's next, this is what's next, this is what's next. And I've been doing it for about 6 years now, and,
do you still love it as much as that first day?
Heck yeah. Yep. This is actually my downtime. Teaching is my downtime.
I love that.
Because, all you're doing is focusing with the students. You're in that role, and all of your time and attention for however long, it's just them. There's no emails, no phone calls, no paperwork, no nothing, right? So I love it. I mean,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I probably will do it the rest of my life. I hope.
What is it about it that is such a euphoric thing for you? What makes it so amazing?
Oh man. Well, obviously the car part, like, that's easy. I still love the cars. I'm such a kind of become such a nerd about the whole process, and like studying it and deconstructing it and explaining it in a way that they can understand it. 2 years of collision, it's a lot of information, and seeing their transformation from like day one until they graduate is so rewarding. You know, they come in, they're super shy, their confidence is like not there. The first semester, it's like, okay, let's get to know each other, let's break things in, and then you start seeing them into their second, third, fourth semester, and it's like wow, I wish I would take a video of you on the first day of class and show you your own transformation, and show you like you've made it this far. You've not just, to me, and I tell them this all the time, the technical part is the easy part. If you're gonna like this, it's gonna stick and it's gonna come natural. Not that you don't have to study or read or whatever, but it's just gonna come natural. I think what I try to focus on more, it's like the soft skills side of things, the communication, the critical thinking, stuff to that effect. Because learning mixing ratios for body filler, it's on a piece of paper,
right?
You know, and it's on the can. You can't mess that up for the rest of your career.
And yet people do.
Yeah, I know. That's true.
But you're right. The soft skills aren't that often taught, and I feel like not just in the automotive industry, but like I went to a traditional 4-year college, and I don't feel like soft skills were taught there either. Like it took me going to tech school and having one instructor be like, all right, we're going to spend the day not talking about cars. We're going to talk about all the rest of the stuff that's involved and goes into you doing what you do. And
which is like 90% of it, right?
Yeah.
Like the technical part is like a little piece.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. So talking about how long this program is, like this was a conversation that you and I had a couple of weeks ago as well. Like I feel like I hear often, you may as well from your students, but this like anxiousness to get further than they are, right? Like I hear particularly just from young people, I'll say often women, but you know, they're in the industry for maybe 3 or 4 months and they're like, they won't let me in the paint booth. I want to go in the paint booth, right? Like you kind of had some interesting things to say about that, and I'm curious to share your opinion on that.
Yeah. Oh man, like, and it's the same for any trade, but obviously, like what I know is collision. If you're coming into this industry, and I can imagine any trade from scratch, there's a lot of fundamental, basic information that you really, 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 really have to master before moving a little nudge up in your career, in your practical practice, in improving your consistency, improving your conceptual understanding. When students come to us, or I think come to a lot of automotive schools or programs, their perception of automotive, first of all, it's a little off, because it's what they see on TV,
Right.
It's what they see on social media, online. Everything's nice and clean and staged, and you know all about it. So when they come to us, it's like, oh, that looks great, and it looks easy, and they explained it so I understand it. But it's one thing to watch it and hear it, and it's another thing to apply it.
Yeah.
So when they come into my program, the first thing I ask, and this is just a question out of pure curiosity, is where do they see themselves in about 5 to 10 years? And they all want to be painters, and they all want to own their own shop. But half of them can't get to class on time, right? So
Right.
it's like, okay, let's work on learning how to hold a broom and showing to class on time. And then we'll talk about being painters and owning shops and all that fun stuff.
It's amazing,
So
isn't it?
yeah, and it's fun. That's the cool part, the transformation part.
Yeah.
And I think the amount of information that they're given here gives them and maybe the delivery of the information, I find that graduates them with a level of confidence that when they go into the industry, it's slapped right out of them, because it's so different to apply what you learn in school in a real world setting.
Amen to that.
And the first thing I tell my students when they get a job, when they secure employment, is understand that you have a lot to learn. Understand that the 2 years that you spent with me, I've probably communicated to you about 5% of what you need to succeed. You've probably retained half of that. And the other 95%, you're going to learn and master with experience. A lot of experience. How you're going to move up in the industry, it's not necessarily how many printed certificates you can show, how you can talk your way into or out of jobs. It's going to be your consistency. That is the biggest thing. Yes, you have done this in my class 5 times successfully.
Right.
Can you do this 100 times successfully? That's what your boss wants to know. That's what your managers want to see. That's what's going to move you up and progress in whatever it is that you end up on. So I think the industry right now is it's going through a lot of changes, driven by technology, by culture, by whatever we want to call it. I don't know if the industry, at least Collision, throughout the years, has ever really done a great job at transitioning people into their industry, entry-level technicians.
Very true.
I know that I had a very particular experience, and this is why when I came in, I wanted to make a path for my students to have that experience. I mean, I went from working at a certified BMW shop before even graduating. I mean, that is amazing, right?
Yeah, it's
and
huge.
It's super rare. I had a welding gun in my hand on my second day of work. That's not going to happen in a million years. But I think what I learned from that experience is that it can happen with the right mentorship. And I think that's part of what we're trying to work with industry and really teach them how to teach, right? Because once they leave here, it's no good that they just go into shops and sweep floors for another year or wash cars for another year.
Right.
They've committed all this time, all this money, they've put in all this effort to complete their education. You're going to hire them and give them a broom? Like, yeah. Come on, you got to...
And that's where we lose people. Like, we lose people from the industry. We wonder why we have a deficit of technicians and body techs, like, because we're losing them. They put all this time and energy they want in, and then we're like, oh, we're going to make fun of you and give you a broom and have you empty garbage cans or wash cars. And, like, and not that we don't have to pay our dues. Like, everybody has to pay their dues. But...
Right.
Yeah,
no,
we don't have...
You're right. But there's a way to mentor them into that, right? And there's other ways to really get a feel for work ethic than just have people sweeping floors for a year. Like I would get bored of sweeping floors and washing cars for a year.
Yeah.
You know, and I think listening to a lot of women's stories, that's been their experience. They've been stuck in these below entry level positions for a little bit too long and just haven't really found the right mentorship to push them up. I think I kind of moved too fast through my personal plan because I had good mentorship. That's 100% why it happened. I could have easily been sweeping floors for 3 years, but no, I was welding on day 2,
Right.
right? Like that's still crazy to me because I see my students and I see them get hired and I hear, how's work going? They kind of tell me what's going on, and it's like, oh, man, you have so much more potential. You don't need to wash cars for another 3 months. Like, come on.
Right.
So that's a lot of the work that we're kind of doing here in the background, and we have right now we have a apprenticeship pilot program in with support of Enterprise, ASC, and a couple other folks to create a sustainable path for students to transition into collision shops. And that's where all my energy has been going for the last 2 years.
It's a good place for it to be going. I think it's so important, and it's also really cool to hear that you've got industry on your side with this, that it is like there's some big players who are saying, yes, this is important and we need to do something about it, because we're losing our industry, right? Like all the skilled folks are aging out of the system, so to speak. And
they're the ones that got all the good tricks of the trade. We got to take
exactly.
advantage of them.
Exactly. And we haven't done a good job of passing the torch and bringing new people in, and male or female. Like we haven't done a good job of it. Like I assume it's the same on the collision side, but on the mechanical side, definitely, like the new kid on the block gets made fun of, gets, all of the hazing that happens, the sending them for parts that don't exist, the like all of the BS that everybody laughs at, right? And I'm like,
yeah,
we're dissuading people from staying in this industry. Like that's what that's doing, right? It's pushing people out, and it's really a shame. So it's cool to see all that you're doing and working on. Can you let us in on some of the secrets of what this program's going to entail and that you're working on making happen?
Sure. So this program is, let me think of what I can say. Okay.
If I'm putting you in a bad spot, it's okay.
No. We're because this is a pilot. This is a proven concept in Rankin Technical College in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
They reached out to us and a couple other colleges nationwide. We are representing the West Coast and California on the West Coast. We are working with a specific pool of collision shops that have committed to piloting this process. Part of the benefits to students include tuition assistance. We give them we have a loan to own tool program where after the 2 years they get to own. It's about $3,000 worth of tools in a toolbox or a tool cart.
Nice.
I believe they get most of their tuition paid for. It's about $500 per semester.
Oh, wow.
They receive uniforms, all the PPE, specialized training through just different manufacturers on top of our curriculum, ASC testing at no cost,
nice.
weld qualification testing at no cost, benefits to shops. Well, the shops that are participating commit to providing a mentor through the 2-year process. They also commit to encouraging the student. I mean, obviously it's a requirement to complete the program, but encouraging the student to go after those additional manufacturer trainings, ASC testing, etc. Let's see, we have one student right now that was placed in a McLaren certified shop.
Oh, wow.
He's doing great.
That's amazing.
He's kind of our pilot program student this semester. It was kind of tricky coming back from COVID and implementing, because there were a lot of shops that were only rehiring the people that they had to let go last year. So it was kind of hard placing students So we were only able to place one, which is fine. Um, and it sounds like our local market is really kind of coming back.
Nice.
California's been a little slow on the coming back process. But our market's coming back. I have a number of folks reaching back out to us looking for apprentices. So
Nice.
we're really looking forward to August and placing a couple more students and following the progress. And students do have to commit to complete the associate's degree program in 2 years.
Okay.
And there's kind of different benchmarks where their eligibility to the benefits are kind of assessed. So they have to meet minimum certain hours of work. They have to sustain a certain grade, attendance, communication, all that kind of stuff. And that's where like the soft skills come in and practicing, all those things that in the long run are not necessarily more important than the technical, but once you're in the industry, they're a little bit harder to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does matter a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So the program is happening concurrently while they're in school, right? So they're doing school and apprenticeship, or is it after school?
Yeah, it's a 8-week on and off cycle, we call it. Okay. So 8 weeks they're on campus, and then 8 weeks they're with the employer.
Oh,
8 weeks they come back to campus, 8 weeks back to the employer, so on and so forth.
Nice.
Through the 2 years. The 8 weeks that they're here, they're introduced to just the theory. There's some demos, some lectures. We check them off on their safety testing, stuff to that effect. And then obviously when they go to the employer, they're placed in positions that match the curriculum of that semester. So for example, this semester we're teaching a paint class. So my student is a prepper right now. Next semester we'll be teaching intro to collision. So next semester he'll be placed in the body shop.
What an amazing program.
I mean, it looks so easy on paper, right?
Oh, of course. Nothing is easy.
It's a little bit of a logistical, fun project after COVID, but we've managed. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of work and headache that goes into that, but it's exciting to see because I feel like the UK and Canada and all of these other countries have for like a really long time had these amazing apprenticeship programs. Yep. And I think it garners more respect for the trades and kind of legitimizes it as a career path, and it makes it easier for folks to get into the trades in a healthy way, right? Where they can get in, they can get experience, they can get hands-on, it can be mentored, and they can easily escalate through the trades. And the US has been so lacking in that. And it's really cool to see this happening. And God, I hope that this program you're talking about stops being a pilot soon and becomes more prevalent all over the country, because I think it's so needed.
Oh, it will. I don't think the industry has much of an option. On the education side, we also have some work to do. We have work to do in the sense of communicating better with industry and aligning their needs with our goals. I think for a long time too, what happened on the education side is things got a little messy. People were teaching chop shop and how to fix carburetors and how to weld with oxyacetylene and
like real outdated old school. Yeah,
so obviously those students weren't prepared to go into the industry. And I don't blame shops for having bad experiences with entry-level technicians coming out of a lot of programs. So a lot of what we've done too is revised our curriculum to meet industry standards. We're not teaching with anything that has flame. We're not painting solvent. We're not any of those old practices are out of here. And as much as we do welcome hobbyist students, it's an open program. We are a community college. Our curriculum does cater to the industry. and my students that are leaving my program and graduating in 2 years can be qualified, like the student I have now, to work in McLaren. I've had students work for certified Porsche, certified Mercedes.
That's awesome.
They're in great jobs,
Yeah.
and the industry needs it, and we have a lot of work to do. Industry has a lot of work to do, and I think right now we're kind of communicating that to each other, and things are looking like they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely like a which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like there are those both sides of things, and I think, as much as we have a trade deficit, we have a trade teacher deficit,
Oh
and
God,
right, like
that's a
finding
scary topic for me.
it's a very scary topic for like the industry, because as much as like I would love for you to be the norm of instructors out there, like you're not. You are this amazingly committed, amazingly passionate unicorn amongst trades instructors and just people in general. You're a unicorn, but um you're incredible. But so we have a lack of good teachers out there that are committed, and then there's like these like layer upon layer, right? Like the trades programs generally haven't gotten as good funding, and so then how can they stay current with technology? And they don't get the funding because the trades aren't respected, and until we get a better training program, the trades won't be respected. So like it becomes this like cyclical kind of thing where it kind of just keeps repeating itself until somebody breaks the cycle. And what you guys are doing with this program, working with industry, what so many people are really trying to do now, I think is what it takes to break that cycle. And I'm hopeful for the future. I really am. I know, right?
I'm taking all your good vibes.
um,
There's a lot of moving pieces. Yeah, and working with the state, like we're a community college, there's 1,000 additional moving pieces and
oh,
bureaucracies, right? So kind of going back to my experience of being handed this on a silver platter is this program was already well established too. So I kind of had enough stability within the program, which is incredibly hard to accomplish for programs, because my mentor was here for 37 years and he did all the footwork, all the groundwork, had all the hard conversations. He was involved in whatever he needed to be involved in to bring support, to bring optics to the program and showcase it and grow it. And in the community college system, it's like if you hold your breath for 30 seconds, like things start falling apart. Like you have to keep on top of things every single semester, every year, updating equipment, updating tools, it's a lot of work. And what happens is, I think with a lot of programs, number one, if there isn't that commitment from not just the instructors but the institution, it makes it really hard. Because if we don't have support from our institution, we a lot of times can't get support from industry. And if we can't get support from industry, then we can't get support from the institution. So it's kind of like this fun game of cat and mouse and cat and mouse. And
yeah.
but I did have a good program when I came in. And when I came into the program as a student, I had a great experience. I can see how it was really well presented. The curriculum was up to date. The experience was great. The instructors were great. So when I came back to teach, kind of seeing the back end of things, I still agreed that it was a great program. What it not necessarily what it lacked, but what could make it better is solidifying that transition for students. And that's kind of where my first 3 years I did a lot of just listening and learning. And I think the last 2 to 3 years I've been kind of slowly moving towards, okay, how do we get this done? How do we get this established? And that's kind of where we're at now. Like January 25th was the first day, and I was like, okay, here we go.
Let's do this.
Yeah, but it is, there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of great commitment from a lot of instructors nationwide. There's a lot of great programs that, you know, maybe just haven't had the right support in different small areas. And it's an expensive hobby. It's an expensive program. I think every year
It's an expensive trade to go into.
It's an expensive trade, but it's a great career. I've always kind of looked at we have a nursing program, and it's an amazing nursing program. And they're accredited by all kinds of things in the state, and the standards and the expectations of the nursing program here are like way up here, and like automotive was like way down here, right? And it's like, we're at the same level. We really are. We should be.
We should be, yeah. And yet we're not treated that way.
You guys are dealing with one live person. We're dealing with up to 15 people in a Econovan.
Right? Absolutely. Right? And 9 million different versions of things and technology that changes so quickly, so dramatically. Like, human body's been the same for how long?
Yeah. Well, however many thousands of years, I don't know.
Right. And not like undermining what nurses and doctors
No,
do,
they're amazing.
They are amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, to say that, like, people who work on cars, you're putting your family in it. You're putting your life in it. So we may not be saving lives in the typical sense, but we are saving lives, right? Like, keeping people safe in their cars.
Yeah. And I think the programs can raise themselves to that standard. The students in the programs can be expected to deliver at that standard. The institution can support raising programs to that standard, and not just like talk about it, but support them monetarily, support we have equipment updates like every 6 months. There's a new version of a clear coat every 30 seconds. Right. And it's like, yes, we need to buy things every year because there's a new car coming out of the factory every 6 months. There's new everything, right? Like, our faculty has to go through at least 80 hours of training every year. It's just a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like, especially on the collision side, because you're dealing with so much new technology so rapidly, whereas like back in the day it was metal work, body work, paint, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe some
plastic,
mechanical disassembly, right?
You got all this, that, and the other. You got airbags, you got diagnostics in between, you got ADAS, you got
totally. You got windshields that need to be calibrated. You've got park distance sensors. You've got all of these things that are just layer upon layer upon layer that, like, the education level and the skills required has just exponentially grown, and yet the perception of the trades hasn't exponentially grown with it. And that's the
unfortunately, the consumer is the one that gets the shortest end of that stick, because they're going into cars are going into shops and getting fixed in God knows what way, and they're rolling out. See, it's kind of a double-edged sword that we have such an aesthetic aspect to our industry, because we can make things look incredibly pretty and perfect from the outside.
And it may not function at all.
But what's going on underneath, it could just be a cluster, you know what. So, and that's a concern, because there's a huge safety aspect that goes with that. Yeah. The vehicle should perform just like it did when it left the factory in an accident if it happens again. And if you're welding with the wrong wire, if you're overheating the metal, if you're repairing something that should have been replaced, if you're applying a certain amount of material in an area that should have had a different, there's so many little small details that unfortunately do mean the difference between life and death. And we see that all the time with accidents and lawsuits and uh, just bad repairs in general. And it sucks. And I really do hold to that every time I walk into the classroom. And I tell my students, I know you want to be painters. I hear you. You want to be shop owners. I hope that by the time you leave this program, you take with you that you're not just working on a car to make it look pretty, but you're working on a vehicle to make it function safely. And think of fixing X, Y, or Z car, and it's your parents' car or your wife's car, and your kids are going in there, and I mean it's crazy. I see accidents on the side of the road, and I just think like, oh my God, I wish that wasn't in a bad body shop. But it's we can have a whole other conversation about this part of things, but it's really, I think it's really what fuels me every day. Other than coming here to the students, it's really sharing the value that this industry actually has.
Yes.
To everybody. Everybody drives a car.
Yeah.
And most cars are going to go through a body shop at any point in their life, whether it's a little bumper scratch or full structural repair.
Right.
I don't know. I love every aspect of it.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think like the knowing that shops like that exist, right? The bad body shops, the bad mechanic shops, the ones that are still working with super outdated technology. And it terrifies me and it saddens me, like, especially the more we get into self-driving cars. Like, you don't calibrate a sensor properly, and like the results can be catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
But so it saddens me, it angers me, like knowing that that exists, because I'm like, don't disrespect my trade, right? Like, you're making a bad reputation for who we are and what we do. And yet at the same time, like, it is also very much the thing that motivates me every day to do what I do. I know it motivates you to do what you do, to like hopefully make some impact so that the future generations won't necessarily have the same battle that we do.
Yeah. And
yet here we are.
Here we are.
So
Little
in the
seed at
little
a
bit of
time.
time that we have
Yes.
left, I kind of want to, I normally ask people the question of what would you say to the younger you. I feel like you've given quite a bit of advice already of what you say to young people. I mean, you say it to young people all day long, every day, and this is what you do. What's your passion? So I want to ask you a variation of that. What do you say to industry as far as how industry can support what you're doing and support itself? How can industry support industry, right? Like, how can we support more people coming in? How can they step up? What can they do?
Oh man.
That's a big one, I know, sorry.
Yeah, no, but I think it's a good question, and I actually had this conversation with a friend of mine, shop owner, a couple weeks ago. Being an automotive program, being a community college program, what it looks like to industry is that we need stuff, right? We need money, we need equipment, we need consumables. And I think in that conversation, what I was telling her is, look, we are a community college program that is well established, and we have the institution, that the community college institution, which its role is to support this program and make it function, right? What I ask of industry is, I don't ask for donations, I don't ask for fundraising, I don't ask for you to come in and paint my walls. I ask that you lead by example. I ask that you come in and you talk to my students about your experience. I ask that you commit to taking my graduates and walking them through the process of their apprenticeship. I ask that you teach them everything you possibly can for as long as you possibly can so they can be a better version of you. That's what we need from industry. I know I'm in a very privileged place to say that I don't need money in my program. That is not the case for a lot of places, 100%. But I think where industry can better support us is to join us in this process of helping students solidify collision repair as their career. Build relationships, just be mentors. That's what we need.
I love it. Wiser words were never said. I agree 100% with everything you're saying. I think you are an incredible, incredible woman. I am so, so privileged to know you. I think your students are privileged to have you as a teacher. And I think that the industry will be in good hands if we have folks like you out there. And I think what the industry needs is us to duplicate you like 100 times over, so we have more of you out there.
I'm a pain in the butt outside of work.
I know. I've hung out with you outside of work. And I don't think you're a pain in the butt at all. I think you're wonderful. So
I'm honestly piggybacking off of people like you and just watching the people that I admire, and it's like, oh, look at the cool stuff that they're doing. Like, let's try that. You know what I mean? So it's all little stuff that has already been in place in front of me. So I appreciate all you do, and
I appreciate
everything.
that. And your humility is beautiful, and yet you deserve a lot of the credit as well, because it's one thing to see other people doing stuff. It's another thing to jump in and do it, and then also to take it to the next level and just keep raising the bar, and you are doing that, and keep doing what you're doing. And if anybody is watching, her words of wisdom, her words of advice on so many things, but if you're part of industry, her program doesn't need money, but lots of programs do. There's a ton of programs out there that could use tools, could use engines, could use cars, could use any equipment that you don't have.
Consumables.
Yes, all of the things that kill these programs. If you have a hard time hiring technicians and collision folks, like, put your money where your mouth is, as Laura said, and fund these programs that will get kids skilled that you can then hire. So it's a collaborative effort for us to fix this trade deficit problem. I'm grateful that you're out there on the front lines doing shit, and you got this. You got this. I'm proud to know you, and I appreciate everybody who has joined in. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. I know Laura and I could probably talk for another 3 hours about this
15
topic.
hours, actually.
Yeah, 15, totally, easily. And we will do more of it, I am sure. So I appreciate all you for